This is the UC Hunting Properties Podcast, your home for all things recreational land. Our goal, to help you stand on your investment. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of UC Hunting Properties Podcast. Quick announcement to start the podcast today before we dive in with our special guest. Mike Reed's joining us today, but I want to make everyone aware, especially everyone listening that's in the UC Nation or UC Hunting Properties camp with us. We are going to be auctioning a turkey camp experience with the guys from Midwest Whitetail. And I know Mike's going to try to be there. Josh for sure is going to be there. Drake Lamb's going to be there. It's going to be an awesome crew. And the gist of it is we're going to auction this off opening night at convention. What it basically entails is a 3-day filmed hunt. The Midwest Whitetail guys, they'll be getting content gathered up for their Chasing Red series that'll semi-live this spring. We'll be doing the same. We'll actually be producing your hunt. Obviously, we're going to use that on our socials, our YouTube, and it's a great content tool for you as an agent for further exposure. But probably more importantly is the fact that this crew we got coming from Midwest Whitetail is. My guess is whoever buys this and comes, because it's a trip for two. So whoever buys it, it'll be you and a guest spending 3 days in the Missouri River breaks with us. We'll be hunting down at Harris Hunts again. Exceptional ranch. There's going to be a calf branding. While we're there, we're going to help them push probably 100 head through and get some of those little calves branded up, which is a cool experience of and in itself. But all that said, I'm really looking forward to this hunt. Anyone that's been around Drake Lamb for any amount of time knows the dude is a riot. So regardless of how the hunting is, which it will be exceptional, you would leave there with a sore gut from absolutely dying laughing. That I can almost promise. So anyway, all of that said, Mike, I wanted to get that out. Welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on, and we are looking forward to that hunt. That's going to be a real good time.
Yeah. So Mike and I were just sidebarring ahead of hit and go on this podcast, and Mike has a potential scheduling gap. And Mike, I'm going to let you touch on it, because I mean that's a once in a lifetime thing that potentially overlaps.
Yeah. My wife and I, we've been applying for a Kodiak brown bear hunt for a couple of years now, and I haven't been drawn yet. But it's a yacht-based hunt around Kodiak Island, and one that we've just really been saving up for and looking forward to taking. And it's got pretty good draw odds. And I find out February 21st, and all I know is end of April, early May. So I was kind of like, hopefully I can squeeze both in and just basically leave Montana and go straight to Alaska. But we'll see. I'm hoping to be able to get both of them in.
Dude, that'd be so cool. So Mike has a question mark on his attendance, but I think we'll all give him a hall pass 100% if he's going to chase Kodiak brown bears instead. So
that's right.
Hopefully that all works. That'd be cool if the timing did work. But Mike, for our guests listening, I don't think you need much of an introduction, buddy. You've been a pretty staple part of Midwest Whitetail, and I guess I would say the outdoor industry in general now for quite some time. But give us like a fairly brief background on who you are and how you landed, where you're at, Mike. Because I mean, from the outside looking in, dude, you're living the dream.
Yeah, I am living the dream. One I work to get to, of course, but
absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in South Louisiana. Just grew up in the bayous and the swamps of the South Louisiana, and cut my teeth on public land down there with my grandfather and my uncles. And just, I like to say I was born with a passion for deer hunting. I mean, as long as I can remember, from just being a little toddler running around wanting to chase deer. And down there, the hunting wasn't always great, but I just never lost interest. I just loved the woodsmanship, learning everything. Had really great influence in my family. And as I got more into it, I started bow hunting as a teenager, and just not my brothers, my dad aren't big hunters, but my grandfather and my uncles are, and just grew in passion with it and kept growing. And when I got to med school, I met some buddies that had some larger tracts of ground down there they managed. And that's when I really started learning how to age deer and pass deer and learning about all the management side of things. And, kind of grew up watching the Drury's and other guys in the Midwest, and like, man, that place looks pretty cool.
Right.
There's some big bucks up there. And one thing led to another. I went to LSU for undergrad, went to med school down there. And Yeah,
Oh, never
exactly.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah. But eventually, my wife and I moved up to Iowa really for work. I'm a head and neck surgeon, and came up here to do my training, complete my training, ended up settling down here. And it worked out to be in one of the best states for whitetail hunting, of course. And
Kind of worked out perfectly.
that's right. I started filming probably in '05, and that was partly with hunting my buddy's place where we passed so many younger deer. I just would bring a camera,
Sure.
and that passion slowly developed over time. And honestly, I got into Iowa and through a series of events met Bill and a few guys and got on the pro staff. I mean, I think I'm in year 11 on Midwest Whitetail. And
Yep.
one thing led to another over time as Bill was exiting and guys were exiting, that I was in a position and offered to buy it and wanted to see it continue. And here we are now. I own and still part of Midwest Whitetail, and living the dream is an understatement.
Yeah, well, congrats on that too, Mike. Because I probably should have opened with that that you recently acquired Midwest Whitetail, and now, truthfully, you and the team, you're at the helm of the direction, and I do want to hit on that because I mean, you always have a good season, Mike, and I mean that. Like, I mean, even looking behind you in your house, a lot of big critters have hit the ground with the camera running, and somehow you guys just keep raising the bar every year. Um, and I even think back to like when I started following Midwest Whitetail, and I don't know when it clicked with me, but I mean, you guys were definitely ahead of the curve on what was coming down the pipe. So like fast forward now, you guys used to be the anomaly, right? Like this web-based semi-live format, and it was cool because it kept you coming back. Like to me, it was like, oh, Midwest Whitetail drops today, right? Like, and it was awesome because you were living it real time. And somehow you guys in whatever it's been, 15 years, or to your point, you've been with it 11. Um,
Yeah, '08 was when Bill started it, so it's a long time.
Yeah, I mean that is a long time, and in that time, I mean, I think we could both agree we've seen a lot of shows come and go. You've seen a lot of per se celebrity hunters come and go, and I think you guys just keep getting more and more traction. So I don't know what the
I
magic's
appreciate that.
well, and I say that wholeheartedly. I mean, there's a reason. Uh, when we think of who we want to partner with and associate our brand with, I mean, I'd argue you guys are one of the most instrumental partners we have.
Man, I really appreciate that. I think it's a real testament to the team, right? I mean, we have a great team, not only just in the office production wise, but all the pro staff, right? Guys that are committed to the purpose, not only of education, but whitetail management and herd management, land management, just this whole thing that we all sort of live and breathe, this lifestyle of deer hunting. And everybody, we all started out wherever we did. We all sort of aspire to own ground and grow the biggest deer we can and have healthy deer herds and all this kind of stuff. And, we're all bit by the same bug. And so we don't do it just to, have a kill or this or that. So I think just staying true to ourselves, and we are always trying to do better from a creative standpoint, a production standpoint, tell the story. It's not just go out, shoot the buck, look at my big buck. It's all about how do we get there, and what strategies we implement, and all that kind of good stuff. But it's fun. There's a lot of passion in just getting age on deer and seeing what they can become, and then over time trying to outsmart them and get them on the ground.
Playing the game, right?
That's right.
On that note, Mike, and I'm going to kind of blend this back into obviously real estate's our world, right? I mean, these rec farms are what we're based in. Um, on that note, like, I mean, what I heard you just say is that you guys are very intentional in what you're doing. Like, it's not happenstance. You're not getting per se lucky every year. 15 guys on your crew are getting lucky. It's very intentional.
Yeah.
Um, just curious on it, even a glimpse into that. And I don't know, I get it's a team, but I also know you have to be intentional in how you guys are thinking going into every season, what stories you want to tell, um, because you do it master, like almost like a master course on how to do it. I guess I'm just curious, like, what is that planning and strategy? Like, how does that work when you guys are laying out, next year or this year in the production? And I'm just curious because the best real estate agents, in my opinion, are very intentional in how they market.
Sure.
I feel like it's the same thing, just in two different, verticals, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, it's not done, in the 6 months prior to the season. It's done like it's a 3 year thing. We'll pick a good 3 year old out and we start telling that story. We're thinking about when they're 5 or 6. We start talking about what we're seeing as far as their activity, their behavior, their personality, where their home range is. Every year, like summer off season comes around. All right, where is this deer? Is he still alive? We might have 10 storylines going, and if neighbors kill deer or deer drop off, they die VHD, like they narrow down. But we are always, I know, at least for our core team, we're always looking for, we're propagating these stories because they're all multi-year sort of stories, almost always. So I had 3 bucks last year that I was the whole time doing interviews for them for next year. And those don't necessarily, they're not necessarily on the show
You,
because
you never know if they're going to make it, right? Yeah.
right. Yeah. So a lot of it is literally knowing what product we want to put out and how do we make it as good as possible, right? And really trying to film those pieces. We're not big on doing recreates. Sometimes you have to, but we don't want to go back and like try to film all this stuff. So it's cooler in real time as it goes, and being able to go back and be able to piece together all those segments and make that story where you can see all the effort and years that went into it.
No, and like I said, you guys could put a master course on because you do a bang up job with that. But um, it, and I can't wait, honestly, Mike. Like, I'm sitting here looking at my notes, and I'm going like, what? One of my notes I scribbled to myself was like, how does Midwest Whitetail keep rolling at that level and beyond? Because I do feel like you guys are always kind of leading the pack, and then everything else just works around it, right? And as we've seen the transition from, what I would consider cable TV,
Yeah.
and you build your 13 episodes, and they all start dropping, whatever Q3, and then they wrap back around and you got a whole year to plan. Like, you guys are plumb opposite of that. Like, everything's happening real time. And that's why this blend of the strategy and being intentional, to me, it's almost mind boggling,
Yeah. It's a lot of work, right? It's credit to the guys in the office and credit to the team, as I mentioned before. I mean, Bill had a great idea when he started it. I mean, no one was doing it when he started it back in '08. And now, of course, there's been a major shift towards digital. But staying true to who we are, again, like what is the purpose? Why do people tune in? Yeah, it's fun to shoot big bucks and it's fun for people to follow that. But really, like, what is the weather, like, especially for the region? We have all these regional teams, we cover the whole Eastern United States. What is applicable to me? Can I get information from what people are seeing? What are we expecting? What are we seeing rut wise? Try to help hunters. I mean, it's the coolest thing to be at a trade show and have somebody come up and say, no one in my family hunts and I've learned everything I know from Midwest Whitetail or whatever it is, right? I mean, I
Right,
never
right.
started this to be, I always say my profession is a head and neck surgeon. My passion is deer hunting, right?
Yep.
But I'm happy to tell people what I've learned from my failures and my successes, and if it's helping people, we love it, and it certainly helps push us in that direction.
Well,
But
I think there's no doubt what you guys are doing. And like I said, to me, it kind of is the perfect blend of entertainment, storytelling, educational stuff, when it comes to land management and taking care of the herd and hunting strategy, of course. On that note, Mike, like, you got a lot to balance, dude. So I do
really,
just, I just want to hit on like the work life balance. Cause like I said, on camera, someone watching you, like, you're living the dream. Here's this dude, he's a surgeon, lives in Iowa, has these farms. But then in the background, like, dude, you really do have a practice. You're a full-time doctor. Now you own Midwest Whitetail. You got a bunch of kids running around that are at a busy age that all want to hunt. Like, how do
yeah,
you even, like, what's your,
yeah. I don't know that I have a magic recipe. It's pretty chaotic, right? I think I tolerate a fair amount of chaos. I have to give a shout out to my wife, of course. I've got an awesome wife who gets it all. She embraces it all. She enjoys the chaos as much
she's
as I do.
clearly a saint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And she enjoys the hunting herself. She really we share the same vision of how we want to raise our kids, and not only just like in the outdoors, but like try to get away from screens, get outside, learn stuff, live a life a little. Where's our food come from? Let's learn some skills. But also just like overall life management, right? So what can I take on? Always staying in maybe a slight state of being uncomfortable. Keep adding to the pot. Like don't get comfortable. Don't settle.
Yep.
Push the limits. What are our limits? Yeah, I mean, if you'd asked me 15 years ago, even if I'd see myself where I am now with what I got going on, the businesses I own, the things I'm into, I don't know that I would have had that foresight, but,
Right.
certain dominoes have fallen that have allowed me to take on different things and surround myself with good people. I mean, I'm definitely not doing it on my own. And, each group, each thing I'm in is it's all about good communication and balancing, right? I mean, I was just on the Hunter podcast not that long ago, and they're in real estate, so they can, when the front's coming in, they're saying, "Hey, I can go hunt when the front hits." And how do you? I'm like, yeah, I don't do that, right? I have a medical clinic, and
Right.
I will not cancel my patients, right? I don't want to do that to people. It's professionalism. I want to maintain. So, 6 months in advance, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take these 2 days off and these 3 days off and these 2 days off. And I just try to like roll the dice and have enough spreckled days off where I'm
Sure.
going to hit some good stuff. But, it's a balance. And I enjoy it. It's my tree therapy. If it was raining, snowing, whatever, I'm going to go sit out there and just enjoy the wild and the outdoors, and it usually lines up.
And it's funny because I've actually picked up on that, Mike, like watching especially your episodes. You do go. Like if you're off, you're going hunting, and
Oh
it
yeah.
doesn't matter if it's 83 or if it's raining or like I think a lot of us live in a like a Drury's deer cast.
Well,
Um,
sure.
Good or bad, you know what I mean? But like you
Yeah.
look at it and you're looking at the predictability scales and it's like, oh, today's, poor or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys would elect not to go if they have the flexibility. You go all the time.
If they have the flexibility, right? Well, one, it is a big sacrifice for me to take off of work, right? I've got overhead. I've got things that I'm like skipping to take off to go hunting. And so I'm like, there's no way I'm not going to sit out there. Right.
Right.
And I'm going to go get whatever I get out of that. And we had a running joke the last couple of years of how many deer we have killed as a family when DeerCast says poor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, I mean, obviously I love hunting on the great conditions. I
Sure.
got high pressure, clear. I love those days and they're better. But, I grew up grinding it out in places you couldn't always pick. And I still feel like I don't have the most flexible schedule. I try to make it such, but,
Right.
and
Well, and you got families relying on you. You got employees, like so. Mike not working affects more than just Mike not working.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. There's some trickle down effect, and you can't kill them on the couch, as they say. So
fact. Well, and
yeah,
let's be honest, the worst day in the deer woods is still better than almost any day at work. So
100% agree with that one.
yeah, but no, you do a good job juggling that. I just thought it'd be worth mentioning because I do think a lot of our agents, especially, I mean, they're running at a pace most people can't even understand.
Right, right.
But same thing, they got that burning desire in their gut, and deer seemingly start to control their life. So, dude, kudos to you on how you balance that.
Well, thank you.
The other thing I wanted to touch on, Mike, because I think not that it's necessarily unique to you, but I do think like you and I were talking at ATA that your real estate journey is pretty cool. And now I don't want to call it a third business or a secondary thing, but let's be honest, you parked some money in land with a vision. Like, give us a little snippet of your real estate journey.
Yeah, I mean, for as long as I can remember, I mean, I wanted to own land. I mean, probably when I started thinking about deer hunting to the level that I am now, and again, watching the juries and seeing what they could do with land in the Midwest. And of course, they're not making any more land, as they say. It's a great investment. And
Yep.
I mean, I invest in plenty of things, of course, but I've always wanted to own land. And so I really started out my career in medicine with that in mind. Like, let's pay off our med school debt. Let's pay off this. Let's, of course, 401ks and Roth IRAs, and let's do our like kind of pay ourselves first. But the money I was putting to the side wasn't to buy a fancy this or buy a fancy that. It was, I want to buy some land.
Yep.
And so I got my first farm in 2015, and and I came up in a time where I did have friends that weren't in med school that got good jobs in the oil field or wherever that started buying land before I did. We all kind of grew up the same way, wanting to own land, loved hunting, whether it was waterfowl or deer or whatever. Just
Right.
own some ground and manage it and do what you want with it. And there was a time frame I feel like before it was different than we are now, where you could really, when this was first taken off, maybe in the 2000s, mid 2000s, where you could go buy something pretty cheap, and turn it into a little deer place and flip it, buy an 80, get some equity built into it, sweat equity, flip it, get a bigger farm. And originally I was kind of thinking that way, but when I started getting into the game, land prices were already,
Oh yeah.
escalating. Yeah, yeah. So it was all I could do to save up my 25% down and get the first farm I could get, and bought one in southern Iowa in Van Buren County, and felt like I had good meat on the bone, so held on to it for a few years, built some history on it, and
Mike, on that, I'm just curious, because I think a lot of people go, a similar route, right? Like you work your tail off to get a down payment built up,
yeah,
and once you hit a specific threshold, you can basically go shopping, right?
yep, yep, yep.
So I'm just curious, when you started, the shopping process, for lack of a better term, um, did you have a checklist? I mean, were you super open minded, or were you like, I want to farm with this, this, and this? Like,
Yeah, I would say I'm very open minded. I mean, I had called so many people and said, just everything you got, send it to me. I mean, I'm not going to say no to anything. I think every situation is unique. I've got some farms that I think from the surface, people wouldn't even necessarily think are good, and they end up being great farms. But I went in, of course, with an idea. I mean, I've been perusing listings for years, just
yeah,
dreaming, right? And kind of thinking about, of course, neighborhood, having hunted. I started hunting in Iowa in like '04. I was still in college when I started hunting in Iowa. And deer drives were something that I wasn't used to back home. I mean, we chased deer with dogs down there and all kind of crazy stuff like they do in plenty of states, but I wasn't used to the deer drives and the open country and all the roads. And so I was originally looking for, I want cover, I want big timber, I want big sections, and I want to be able to have an area where I can have a good deer density and get age on deer, because it's all about just getting age on them, right?
hundred
And so
percent.
that's
Yep.
how that's how I started out. Like, and that's not necessarily the most huntable of places, right? So a big, 1,000 acre timber, which is what I grew up hunting, the big swamps and things like that, they don't lend themselves to the obvious pinches and funnels or the CRPs with the ditch through it. So I've kind of modified a little bit what I look for as far as huntability, but I never say no to a farm, right? It's like you want to look at it and let me see what it looks like. Of
Right.
course, you hope you can find a good neighborhood with people with like-minded management strategies and things like that. But that is so hard to really know ahead of time. Right now where I'm settled in Iowa, I mean, I'm of course now trying to buy stuff around me just because I love where I'm at and the area that I'm in. And so the last couple farms I've bought have just been private sales, right? Talking to
Yeah.
neighbors and that kind of thing. But yeah, for years I just was perusing, and then that first farm was a 260-acre piece with no road frontage. So it was a carved up area of Iowa, kind of bluffs, rivers, so lots of
Yeah.
for
Van
photography.
Buren's pretty rough. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
pretty rough
some.
country, right? Cattle country, lots of timber,
Yep.
and big section, like a 10 square mile section, and I was the center of it. And so
Wow.
I had an access lane, but that thing hunted huge, and I had 60 acres of tillable that was broken up into 4 fields. So I mean, there were some years I had 10 bucks in there that were 5 or older. I mean,
Wow.
that's on camera anyway. That
Yeah.
they didn't maybe call it home, but passing through. So it was really fun to have a place with good age structure and and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So you started with the 260, Mike. Where did you go from there, or like how has this thing evolved up into
Yeah,
what I consider your crown jewel, your river farm?
yeah, yeah. Honestly, I'd bought the 260 and was just never planned to sell it. I mean, it's like my baby, right? My first farm, and I just loved it. And so I was continuing to save and ended up buying the river farm. So actually, an orthopedic surgeon that I worked with had it, and he owned it for 20 years, and he wanted to sell it. He was basically getting out of deer hunting, retiring, and so I got access to that. I got to buy it really before it hit the market, and bought that. And that was really just to add. It was going to be a second farm, right? And then over time, my home farm, which is up where I work, that came available, which I was getting into too many things at one time. There were too many things that were coming available, and I was really embracing sort of this newfound ability to buy some land, and I ended up selling Van Buren. One reason was it was 2.5 hours away. The kids were getting of age where they were getting busy in sports. We used to go there Friday after work till whatever Sunday night, and we couldn't get there till Saturday morning. So that was playing a role in my wife and I's desire to start to get something closer. The
Yeah.
river farm's like an hour and a half closer to the house, just an hour away. And we ended up selling Van Buren to buy the home farm, which we're planning on building a house there. That's still where I take the kids a lot because it's 5 minutes from work. It's 5 minutes from their school. It's a place that we can really get to, but it's way different than the river farm. Of course, there's a lot more hunting pressure. It's not quite as good. And then over time, I've been building up ground around the river farm. There's been some auctions that have come up that I've been able to buy ground on and pieces a mile away or whatever. And so I bought the river farm in 2017. So over the last 8 years now, I've added 3 or 4 more chunks around it and continue to do so. And that's just been, once I've paid off a couple of farms, I've been able to use that equity to buy more. And it's been the primary focus for me. I mean, I've not been trying to.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because I mean, to your point, once you get ahead of the curve,
Yeah.
and have some equity, and now you're holding it and it's appreciating. I mean, I think the 50-year average on land almost trends identical with like the Dow or the S&P. Like you can just about take to the bank you're going to do 6 to 7% just because you own it.
Right. Yeah.
And obviously we've seen the market swing substantially more than that in the last 10 years, especially. But I was just curious on like, like I want to ask you, what's your end game with land? I mean, in my opinion, there's never enough, of course,
Right.
like you buy more or whatever, but just out of curiosity, what's your end game? I mean, is there a legacy farm? Is that the river farm? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I was saying that the other day. I was like, I don't think I could never get that value back out of for what it is, at least not from a experience standpoint or recreational standpoint. There's no amount of money that may be like, oh yeah, I'll take that and I'll go buy something else. I mean, that farm is pretty special. I've got 5 kids, and I would love that when I'm gone, that they all had all the land they ever wanted to spend time on, or each take a big chunk or whatever. That would be a beautiful thing. If you ask my wife, the last few farms I bought, I'd say, well, I think this will be the last one. I don't think I need any more after this. But every time somebody calls me and I start looking at them, like, man, there's equity in that one already. Like, this is a good
right.
investment. And I was fortunate with a couple of ones I flipped. Obviously when COVID hit, like land prices took that real big jump. There was, I'm not above playing that game a little bit with some of the properties, but where I'm at now, I mean, I've got one I'm closing on in a couple months, and that'll put me at, geez, almost 1,800 acres here in Iowa. So I'm feeling like where I'm at now, I can have my 5 kids, friends that want to come hunt, guests and the partners, whatever. We have enough to where we can have people come hunt, enjoy the land, keep the herd well managed where we're not killing young ones, and it's sustainable.
Yeah.
So I'd love to branch out into other states, right? I'd love to start looking at some other states around that would offer, if I ever tag out early or, open up some September hunting or, I mean, I've thought about going out west because I just love elk hunting. And, there's one thing to go pay money, but it'd be nice to just own a ranch.
Oh yeah. Well, and we're starting to see that trend. And I mean, Mike, this, but I mean, our tagline, stand on your investment. And that's why when we look at land ownership, yes, it feeds the DNA running through your body because you're tore up with hunting and in the
Right.
pursuit of and what have you. But stand on your investment. I mean, we mean that, right? Like this is a major piece of the pie for most people financially, and you get to enjoy it along the way. It's kind of a no brainer.
Yes. No brainer. I tell people that all the time. If you think about where you're putting your money, I mean, it is a good investment, but then it's something you get to use. It's not just stuck in the market.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. I've never seen a grip and grin with a stock paper or whatever. I mean, maybe there should be. Maybe
Yeah,
we
yeah,
just
yeah, right.
invented something. But
Maybe some guys with NVIDIA. Yeah, yeah, they could have
right,
been.
right. I bought this Apple back in '80. Never mind. But no, yeah, I tell you what. I mean, I think And I was going to ask you about that if you're already starting to look to expand or move into other states, and we're starting to see a pretty natural progression into states like Kansas.
Yeah.
A lot of guys that are diversifying, they're going to Kansas because I think the gain's still there. Like
Mhm.
not saying Iowa's been squeezed to death, but I mean
Yeah.
it's no secret what we have here in Iowa, and I still think Kansas is on that. I think states like Oklahoma, I think are sleepers.
Yeah.
And dang sure if you get out west and you want to chase muleys or antelope or elk or what have you, and if you want to go out west, you got to let me know because we got some dudes out there that you'd be in real good position with. I'll put it that way.
I'm always up
Um,
for meeting new people, man.
yeah, that's our buddy Wade Keller does a lot of business out there in the Bull Mountains
Okay.
or that region of Montana, and I would be pretty hard pressed to think you could own private ground somewhere better because it's a relatively easy tag because it's so much private ground.
Okay.
So like the top end qualities there, Mike, and it's relatively easy. Like you could put all five of your kids in. I'll bet any given year, 50% of you'd be hunting there.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's
what.
kind of
Yeah.
that's what I mean. So if you're
Yeah.
looking at it from that perspective, it's I don't want to say a revolving door, but kinda.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when the time comes, I'll be leaning on you for some inside
A,
information. But
amen, brother. If I got it, I'll give it to you.
with Kansas, I leased there last year. I hunted Kansas when I was in med school, actually. I mean, there's such great hunting out there, great whitetail hunting in
Where
particular.
do you hunt in Kansas, Mike? Not to give your trade secrets away, but generically speaking, what area are you
I mean,
in?
I started off when I was in med school, I was in Kansas City. So I was
Yep.
hunting like Northeast, which is bluff country, very familiar type of terrain. Last year we leased in South Central, just cattle country, cedars,
Yep.
and more like Oklahoma type stuff, stuff that you wouldn't think giant bucks were running around in, necessarily.
Right.
It's like, what are they eating out here? And
It opens your eyes. I mean,
yeah,
we just did a podcast a couple weeks ago with some of our team members down in Kansas because of the their 80-acre rule, right? If you own 80,
yeah,
you got a tag, but like now there was some tweaks to, can the
right,
LLC own it and who gets to hunt it or who gets that landowner tag, and
right.
try to do kind of an educational piece on owning ground in Kansas.
Yep, yep. It is interesting. It's obviously those whitetail deer, it's amazing that they can survive in just about anything. But two of the states I kind of always kept my eye on were Illinois and Kansas because of that landowner, non-resident landowner rule where you can guarantee a tag. Like that's
Yep.
one of the, arguably one of the things that keeps Iowa great is, you can't if you can own 2,000 acres, you don't necessarily get a tag.
Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, exactly. Those states, from a non-resident standpoint, are attractive, but there's always stuff. You'd hate to. There's always stuff coming up in the legislature where that might be going away, right? You hear
You
guys
never
talk.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm like, oh, okay. I need to. It's not guaranteed forever, that's for sure.
It does seem like I mean, on that note, we just did Skip Sly's a pretty good buddy, and we just podcasted with Skip, and I do think once a state goes over that threshold, like sets a precedent, and whether that's with non-resident landowners or non-resident tags in general,
Yeah,
it's like once the ship sails, I think it sails.
it's hard to
Um,
bring it back, right?
right. So I'm all about what we're doing here in Iowa, and kind of fighting tooth and nail that it's gonna be a resident first state.
Sure.
Period.
Yeah,
So I'm
it's
all
hard to
about it.
argue with the quality. I mean,
Keep Iowa great, baby.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, Skip's our biggest cheerleader, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, he's doing a great job, kind of heading that charge up for us. But so Kansas is on the radar. Any other states, Mike, that you'd be actively, pursuing maybe
Yeah,
expanding into?
I mean, purely for whitetail. I mean, I think North Missouri you could get into it. I would say Nebraska, certain areas in Nebraska, but if I'm just thinking about where I live in eastern Iowa, Illinois and Missouri, are two that
The
come to
obvious
mind.
ones.
Yeah, I mean, Missouri is nice because the land prices are better than say Illinois, and
Mhm.
also like for all my friends back in Louisiana, family members that they can just buy a tag every year. If you can get something in the right area with, there's still enough people out there that want to manage that. I mean,
Yep.
you can have some fantastic hunting. So Um,
The thing I've seen, especially I'll speak to Missouri probably the most because we have some top notch agents down there. Um, that to me looks like an outfitter balance. Like if you had
sure.
if you were in the right neighborhood, there's no doubt you can do in northern Missouri what you guys are doing in southern Iowa or what we're doing collectively in Iowa.
Yeah,
In general, it the potential's there, and it might even be higher. You just have to have some like-minded neighbors.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. And the biggest hit against Missouri, well, a lot of those states, is just the gun season and the rut. So you got to have people that say, "I choose not to," shoot the young bucks, and obviously that'd be frustrating if you had a farm and your top end young ones are always getting shot. So you'd have to be, selective in where you're buying and hoping you're doing the due diligence to find a spot that you can get age on them.
Well, everyone forgets that trigger control's probably the number one management tool that doesn't get talked about
For sure.
enough,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. And it's
And
not
it
to say like be happy, right? Shoot whatever makes you happy, but
right, right.
yeah, yeah.
It's a weird balancing act, and I think the one thing no one ever talks about is, I mean, there's a lot of deer that should get shot that inevitably don't
Right,
because they're not pretty, right? They
right.
don't have the big 170-inch rack on their head, and it's like, dude, that's 8 years old. Like he just needs to die.
It's true. Yeah, he's not doing us any favors. It's true.
Right.
It's
He's
true.
taking up space and he's eating food and he's
That's
passing on
right.
shitty genetics and yeah, the whole deal. But
The whole deal. I enjoy the pure excitement that my kids have for still shooting, deer that a lot of guys say in my age or close to my age that are like, I'm not going to shoot that. My kids just, if it's a grandpa deer or we have some fun story going with it, they're just all happy to shoot whatever. And purely from I try to focus on age more than anything.
yep.
And of course, I think it's natural to want to shoot the bigger antlered bucks, but if you're talking about the importance of herd management, you're not doing yourself any favors leaving those running around.
Well, that's what I've always said. I'm like, if you really think about it, if you only shot antler size, that's like the equivalent of having a prized bull and then killing him every year instead of letting him breed your
Right?
cows.
Yeah, exactly.
Like kind of counterproductive to kill the herd sire every year.
Every year,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
No, you guys do a great job documenting even the deer that aren't, your big headliners.
sure.
If you got the age and I love that the term you use with your kids, a grandpa deer. He's a grandpa deer, like that's a good way to put it. That probably resonates in their
Oh
minds.
yeah, Grandpa doesn't like it, but it's okay.
Let's take grandpa out. Get him
He's
out of
like,
here.
"Dang, what am I? Chopped liver?" Like.
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah,
That's
it
good.
is neat. Sometimes I don't appreciate, like, one example this year, Bryn, she was all about shooting this buck Krusty, we called him, an old Bill ism. But, he used to name all of his old Krusty bucks Krusty 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
And there was this 8 pointer that just huge body deer that just little tiny rack. And Bran almost killed him in 2023, but a coyote spooked him off, and she would not stop talking about that deer all year. And I was like,
Just tore up with him.
I just loved it. Well, we started going through old footage from when I was chasing chubs a few years back,
Yep.
and I'm like, man, we have filmed that deer for 4 years. I mean, it's like hardly even noticed almost, but it's so cool to be able to have all that documented history. And
Oh, it's super cool.
yeah, I just love that part of it.
No, and it's fun watching you get your kids all tore up with it too, Mike. I mean, it was super cool watching your daughter kill her first bow buck this year, and
Yeah,
I tell you what, that little bugger's got some discipline.
that's right.
When
Yeah,
that deer came in, I mean, like I could feel the I don't know tension or whatever because you've been there, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
and dude, she handled it like a veteran.
I tell you what, Bella's pretty unique. I don't think any of my other kids, certainly not my boys. I feel like they're going to be like everybody else is when they're that age, just like slinging arrows, trying to figure it out. Shoot first, ask questions later. But Bella's so methodical. She's so patient. She wants to execute, and I mean, obviously, I talk to her about these things just in life, right? Like when you have a problem, like analyze, like think
Yep,
about it, make decisions. And it was really cool to watch that unfold in a deer hunting scenario where, I mean, she had been shooting her bow for a year and a half, right? And had killed a turkey with it. And we had bow hunted, maybe a dozen times. And there's been a few opportunities, but nothing that great.
sure,
It was, yeah, she wanted to shoot. She didn't want to, because I said, you can shoot whatever you want. I mean, your first bow deer. And she's like, no, I want to stay true to, the process. And I'm like, hey, more power to you.
Absolutely.
Still to have a buck come out and sit at, 20, I didn't want her to shoot past 22 yards, and he sat, I think, 5 minutes at 27 yards. We had a doe decoy out,
Yep.
just staring at it. She drew back once, had to let back down. I mean, so many people right there would rush a shot. So pretty cool. Then to make a hard shot, watch him fall over. That elation we both experienced. It's I tell you what, it's hard to beat that right now. I mean, that's
Well, and you can't put a price tag on that memory, for you or her, right? I mean,
yeah,
that is forever ingrained or burnt into both your minds. And
it's
what a
true.
cool father-daughter thing to share.
Yeah, she's ate up with it. She just got the bug, and it's awesome to see because I know that we'll be able to, share these memories and enjoy these types of things hunting. She's talking about wanting to go out west, and
Nice.
I'm just like this. It's awesome to see that she likes it so much. So
No, it's fun to watch it too. I mean, she does a great job. You got her in girls wrestling yet, Mike?
yeah, actually, yeah, her last meet of the year is actually today.
That's the one you're going to.
Yeah.
I was going to ask because I mean, like that personality sets up pretty well for next level on the wrestling mat too.
Yeah,
So
she's 13, believe it or not. She doesn't, come across that way, I think, when she speaks, but
no,
yeah,
she's
she's
very
13.
mature.
Yeah, seventh grade, and on her own. I grew up in Louisiana. We don't really have wrestling down there, and so moved to Iowa. Of course, everybody wrestles, and um, the little school they go to, they don't really have a high school team, but they might if this many junior high kids stay into it, or the girls
Yeah,
anyway. And I think she had 15 or 17 girls in her class that went out for wrestling this year, and
that's awesome.
yeah, and so she's complete newbie, and of course I can't teach her much. I'm like showing her videos and stuff, but she's ate up with it. It's fun to see. She's not afraid to try stuff, right? We love to scuba dive. She's does piano. She's in ballet, and she's like bow hunting, and then she's like, I want to wrestle. So she's kind of like just into all kinds of stuff, and it's
That's awesome.
who knows where she'll land or what she'll like long term, but I love that sort of let me go try new things and see
Yeah.
what I like. And it's fun to see her get in there and get gritty. I'm like, you got to be mean. You gotta let her rip. You got to bring out the aggression. And
You got to be willing to grind a little. Yep.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
That's
It
super
hurts a
super
little.
cool. I
Don't
love it.
stop
Well,
till they pull you off.
dude, she's in the right state to have some good mentors around her
Yeah,
if
yeah.
that's the path she goes. So good for her. Mike, we're not going to keep you much longer, brother. I know you, in all seriousness, need to get to that wrestling meet, but any snidbit of what's coming with Midwest Whitetail, where you guys are going with the show, or future plans?
Yeah, I would say we just, we've got a good team around us now. We've been, I think, 3 years, and we're stable. Everybody's here for the long haul. And so we're just thinking about, how do we adapt to the new kind of way the industry is moving, I would say, right? Long farm. It used to be you had your show and people watched it. Now there's obviously social media is changing things. There's a lot more competition. So just in general, trying to stay ahead of the curve, stay relevant, tell good stories, be creative. And then we're always contemplating ways to make our series better, right? We're doing Chasing November in the Q3. That production's our really creative cinematic sort of
Yeah,
chronological story. Our in season journal called The Chase, right? We're trying to build those and keep those very relevant, and get feedback from viewers, and stay on that tight and narrow track where we get people's attention. And then we're always brewing around ideas of how we're going to grow. I don't have any big epiphanies right now, but we're definitely, with the team we have now, we've got the right guys in place to continue to grow. We've talked about doing, an app maybe, and just different things to get people really inside the inner circle, to some of the more day-to-day stuff. But we're all idea guys. We're always throwing around stuff, and always looking forward to the future.
well, and I know you've hit on the team aspect multiple times, but I mean, you guys do have in my opinion, best in the business team put together. So kudos on that. And boys, hope you heard that and keep hammering. But Mike, I'm gonna leave on two high notes. Number one is I want to know, when are you gonna kill the deer you just picked the match setup from? Is he an early buck, or are you gonna have to rut hunt him? What's the game?
October 6th.
He's
Yes,
dead.
he's going to be early. I think I've had opportunities to kill him the last 2 years early, and I think if history tells me anything, I'll be able to. I've got a plan in place. I've got some things I'm going to move around on the farm to hopefully kill him early October.
Did you put a tape on them sheds yet?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it's crazy because at 4, he was this huge framed 6x6 with all these little knickers, and I'm like, man, what is that deer going to be?
Right.
That farm got annihilated with EHD. I mean, it's a
Ugh.
200-acre farm. I found 31 deer dead, like 12 bucks. The neighbors found, and he survived. But
Thank the Lord.
yeah, and I never found his sheds from 4 years old. And so I didn't really have an idea of exactly what he was, but I thought he was in the 70s as a 4-year-old.
Yep.
And then last summer he popped up and his whole frame had gotten smaller. Like some of his tines were kind of like squiggly. Like he just, in my mind, I thought, okay, he was an EHD survivor. He had to worry about surviving. His overall body health and his antlers kind of suffered. So I
Yep.
was a little on the fence right away when he started growing in the summer last year, whether or not I'd hunt him last year. And of course, in a perfect world, I get my deer to 6 or 7, but that farm has so much hunting pressure that I was like, look, if it's the right deer at 5, I'm probably gonna hunt him.
Yep.
Well, he ended up growing, 17 scorables last year, and I mean, he just had points everywhere, good mass, good beams. But then, like I said, he just had shriveled up a little bit, and he ended up busting off the end of his beam, his G5 and his G3, into September. And when he broke everything off, I said, you know what? That's a sign. I'm just not going to hunt him. We're gonna roll the dice. Somebody's going to kill him, or he'll make it.
You
And
don't know. Yep.
yeah, and so I ended up going in there early October, making a ground hunt just to film him. And he came out in the afternoon after work and filmed him.
Clockwork.
Yeah, I was like, there you go, and then we filmed him late season, and I could tell, like I was getting pictures of him on the cell cams. I was telling the guys that I bet he has a limp just because the way he was always holding one leg in all the photos. And we ended up filming him late muzzy, had the muzzleloader in the blind and everything. But I was like, he limped into the beans, and I was like, he still looks healthy. And he is putting weight on that foot, but I wouldn't be surprised a little hoof rot or something from the
Yep.
EHD. And he ended up shedding, much earlier than the other deer. He shed right at the end of the season, right after season was over. But he actually surprised me. I mean, because his rack was kind of compact in the photos, and I was like, I don't know if he grew much or whatever. And I'm in the timber, walking the fence line, looking at some TSI work, and I look over and I could see behind a log one, and then I walk over there, the other one's laying 5 feet away,
That's so
and I'm just
awesome.
like, holy! I picked him up, told the guy, I said, "There's a lot of bone right here," and he had 28-inch beams, and I mean, some of his tines were like 6 inches, where the year before they were 10 or 11, and
Yep.
he still. My estimation, replacing the ones that he broke off, was that he would have probably been low 190s with the 16-inch spread, which in broken, he was 176 with a 16-inch spread. So
Wow.
that's a lot of bone. And so he's one that, he really could be that hit the 200-inch mark.
Well, I'd say you got pretty good odds that he springs back, maybe bigger than
Right.
ever.
Yeah,
Like
just like
really
skip
springs
steer,
back.
skip steer
Yep.
was big at 5, went way downhill at 6, and had a huge 40-inch bounce back at 7. And I'm like, could he be one of these, or is he going to continue to suffer whatever happened to him? We'll see. Either which way at 6, next year he's probably gonna.
He's on the
I'm
list.
probably
Yeah.
gonna hunt him, but we'll see. I always say that, and I have a lot of variables that affect my decision making, but I love trying to get them to what they can be, and he's one of
Right.
those deer that he just has so much going on for him. I really hope he bounces back, and he surprised me with how much bone was actually there. But what a cool buck. I mean, those deer are definitely. I mean, for the years I've owned land and the deer that I pass and the ones we get to 6 and 7, most of them don't get that big, and so it's
Right.
pretty cool to think about, what he might become.
Yeah. Well, you got the makings of a pro football player there. There's no doubt about that. He hit the genetic cards just right. But good luck with that, Mike. We're excited to watch you chase that one. I loved that reel you guys rolled out right away. It kind of got me fired up. I'm like, the lucky devil already knows who he's going
Yeah,
after,
yeah,
but
it's pretty nice to be able to jump right
I,
on that one.
absolutely. So, Mike, we're going to wrap it up. Just one quick plug. Again, all the UC members, if you're at National Convention, Mike's likely going to be part of this hunt. We're going to auction off 3 days chasing Merriam turkeys out in the Missouri River breaks with the Midwest Whitetail crew. We're stoked about it. Anything you could add, Mike, this is your chance to address that audience,
It's
other than
gonna
to
be
raise
a
their
good
hand and
time.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
gonna be a good time. Who doesn't love shooting some thunder chickens, especially some goblin Miriams out in the beautiful country of Montana? I mean, that's gonna be a ball. And obviously, like you said, Drake, Josh, we're all looking forward to it, and can't wait to hang out with the guys.
It's going to be fun. Well, we appreciate the time, Mike. I'll let you get back to the wrestling meet and keep hammering, brother.
Thanks for
Appreciate you.
having me, Kurt.
Thank you.